After Hurricane Katrina, volunteers headed to the Mississippi Gulf Coast to help.
Marlon Miller was also moved by the devastation. The Fort Walton Beechwood sculptor wanted to do something to lift the spirits of the survivors.
Miller recently sat down with our Eric Reynolds to talk about his artwork, his inspiration, and the challenge of working with wood. Here's the interview.
I've always been an artist. As long as I can remember, I've been, working with sculpture of some type. My mother was an oil painter. My grandfather and even my great-grandfather were oil painters, and I was always, intrigued how they were able to bring out on the canvas.
Marlon Miller is a fourth-generation artist, and just like his family before him, he also brings out beauty, but with driftwood and a three-dimensional approach. Miller's early pieces were made with baling wire, capturing things that moved him.
Having grown up on a farm in Iowa, we had horses when I was growing up. I only work with things that I'm moved by.
Living in Hawaii, Miller was exposed to the animals we now see in his art.
There are animals indigenous here to this coast, a lot of the very similar animals that were in Hawaii. And so those I've incorporated into my work, whale tails and the dolphins and the herons and pelicans. The dolphin ponds, the seahorse, the eagles. When I see the trees, I see those animals.
Before Hurricane Katrina, Miller had not carved large wood sculptures. But the Fort Walton Beach artist was moved by what was happening on Mississippi's Gulf Coast, to the storm survivors and the trees.
They started removing these 400- and 500-year-old trees. The salt started to kill these trees, the trees that their great-great-grandparents had played under as children. So I thought maybe that I could save a couple of them by turning them into sculptures. After I'd done a couple of these trees, I was getting cards in the mail. People were leaving me jars of jam and ceramic cups and prayer shawls because they knew I wouldn't accept any money. And I was so moved and so humbled by that that I just continued to come back. What was going to be a 2 sculpture ended up being over 50 sculptures. And instead of 2 weekends or 3 weekends, it ended up being 3 years.
A 40-mile trail of Miller's sculptures now capture the attention of residents and visitors. His creations required love and lots of labor.
They see me as an artist or as a sculptor, and even though carving wood is probably a little more challenging and is not forgiving at all, I get one chance. I'm carving live oak, and this is the hardest wood on earth. Some of my cuts start at 40-45 feet in the air with 40 and 48-inch chainsaw blades. And I'm not cutting this perpendicular like when you're cutting firewood. I'm coming into the end grain. The very first cut may take me 4 hours. I will refuel my chainsaw 7 times before the cut even comes down through. And when the piece of wood falls off, it will weigh 2,000 or 3,000 pounds. The sawdust and the wind and the temperatures and the rain and the physical fatigue of that is so extreme. So it's a lot more than just a carver that's working on something. It gets pretty intense.
He cannot sketch how a finished piece will look, but Miller believes that he won't make any bad cuts because he and his saws are just tools.
People look at clouds and see things in the clouds, and I do the same thing with trees. I don't take a log and decide, I'm going to put a bear or put a pelican. I actually feel like I'm more along for the ride, and maybe God and Mother Nature, they actually decided what was going to go in there, and maybe I'm just along for the ride. I'm just the tool, and it's always been like that, and that's how I feel. I absolutely love this. You can ask me, I can tell you exactly what I'll be doing until the day that I'm no longer able to do it, and that is being a wood sculptor. And I'm just moved by it. I think about it all the time. I wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I can't go back to sleep because I'm so excited to get to work. And I tell my family all the time how blessed we are.
In Biloxi, Eric Reynolds, Fox 10 News.
Keeps it all in the family, too. Miller's wife, Renee, and son, Preston, are his major assistants in the family business. And he says his artwork is still an evolving process.
Today, he's incorporating crushed rock, coral, turquoise, and even space rocket pieces into some of his sculptures. You can see one of those at NASA's Infinity Science Center at Stennis Space Center in Mississippi.
All right.